Welcome to this video all about the camera app in BoomerTech Adventures course, Maximize Your iPad Potential. Now this particular video goes through the many wonderful features of the camera app. And we suggest that you might want to stop the video occasionally and practice with the features and make them your own. It's much more likely that you will internalize these features and remember to use them when you're actually taking pictures with your iPad than if you just watch the movie and then try to remember. So feel free to stop and start and stop and start the video as you practice with the different features. Let's get started. Here are the topics. You can see we're going to look at everything from making sure you know what the icons all stand for, down through the different kinds of lenses, what's the grid, types of images you can take, how you use the timer, and then at the end we're going to review how to attach an image to a text or an email. Let's look at the icons. Now, this particular image, the iPad is in the horizontal or landscape mode, and so the icons are all down the right-hand side. However, different models of iPads may have them in different places, or if you're holding your iPad in portrait mode, which is on the vertical, they may be at the top, but the icons remain the same. So starting at the top, you see concentric circles, and these happen to have a line through them. That means live photo. If they're yellow, it's active. Right now, because it's kind of grayed out and has the line through it, live photos is turned off. Now, I'm going to explain as we go through the video what each of these things means and how they work. HDR stands for high dynamic range. Moving down, there's the timer. Under the timer is a lightning bolt, that's your flash. Then you see a circle with two arrows. That changes the direction of the lens, whether the lens is looking at you or it's looking away. Of course, the big circle is the shutter. Under that is a square. That's the thumbnail of images, and that's where you can see recent pictures you've taken. And then you see a series of words, video, photo, portrait, and it goes on, and you just slide through those, and those are the type of image and video settings. Let's start with the lenses. All you need to do to change which direction your iPad is focusing on to take a picture is to tap this icon. Usually it's using the back lens, which is taking what you see in front of you. However, if you tap on it, it will suddenly be using the front lens and you'll see yourself. Now, a number of people I've had in adult ed have never played with that particular icon, and so it's always a surprise when they tap on it and suddenly they see their face staring at them. So if you haven't tried this particular feature, go ahead and try it. Now, focusing. This is a really cool feature of the iPad camera. It's the same on your iPhone, by the way. So you can choose which part of the image you want in the sharpest focus. If you don't do anything, it just focuses automatically sort of in the middle, and nothing's truly out of focus unless you move the camera or move your iPad. However, it's not the images don't come out as crisp as they might. So if you just touch your screen lightly with your finger, you'll see a yellow box appears. and then remove your finger and move it somewhere else and touch the screen, and the yellow box will appear again. Wherever that box is located, wherever you choose to center it, that's what will be in sharpest focus. So for example, if you're taking a picture of a person, you might position that yellow box right on their face, and that will make them the sharpest image in the whole picture. Or you might move it to the foreground, and so that will be what's very sharp, and in the background will be slightly blurred. So you can have fun with moving the focus around to create different effects in your photos. Let me show you an example. Now here's a landscape picture. I had the yellow box right on the foreground with those cattails. And if you look behind them, you'll see that the background is slightly blurry. So what's emphasized in this picture is the plants, and the background not so much. I could have done it in reverse. I could have focused on the background and then had those cattails kind of fuzzy. So it's neat to be able to play around with the focus. And if you've never done that, I'd suggest that this is a good place to stop the video and move that focus box around. And again, you take your finger off the screen and then put it down again, and the box will show up. Now, we all like to have our images or our pictures in good focus. But sometimes it's hard to, whether we're taking a picture when it's windy or it's cold or something joggles us. Holding the iPad really steady can be difficult. Well, here's a couple of things to do to maintain the best focus. First, try leaning against something. Put your iPad on the back of a chair or a fence or a table and give it something to brace. Or lean up against a wall yourself, and that will help brace your hands. The second thing you can do is you can use the timer. And that way, it gives, excuse me, you can set your iPad down, hit the timer, and there won't be any jostling. The third is, believe it or not, your earbuds. The cord has the volume up and down so you can hear sound better. And if you touch the volume button, it will trip the shutter. So again, that's something to try out. Now, besides the focus, you can control the exposure. You can add more light or you can make things darker. So once again, look at that yellow arrow pointing towards the box. And to the right of the box, the yellow box, you see something that looks like a little yellow sun. Well, if you slide your finger along an imaginary line, vertical line that goes through that sun, you will see a change in the light. If you move it up, you will see more light, and if you move it down, you will see less light. So for example, if you're taking a picture of folks and there doesn't seem to be enough light to get detail of their face, just shift your finger, slide your finger a little bit up along that imaginary line through the sun, and you will see that more light will appear and you will be able to see facial features more clearly. The same if you are in an overbright space, you can lower the exposure. Now, the second way you can control exposure is with HDR. That stands for High Dynamic Range. Has to do with the amount of light the human eye can take in. And this is a good feature to use in several different situations. Number one, sunsets. What will happen with a sunset picture, if you have HDR on, is that the landscape below the colorful sky will have more detail than just being a large black blob. So if you play around with your HDR and see which picture you like best, take one with HDR on and take one with it off, and choose the one you like and trash the one you don't. Another good time is sunny days. You know, sometimes you take a picture of friends outside and it's sunny, but there seems to be shadows on their faces. If you turn HDR on, it will help with those shadows, and once again, you can see more facial details. Also, a backlit situation. If you've taken something against light coming in through a window, it will help with the correct exposure on that. Now, if you go into settings and under the camera, you will see where you can turn HDR on. It depends on which iPad you have. Sometimes you can just leave it on automatic and the software will make that decision. Other times you can make it manual and you can choose just to touch the icon on the screen to control whether HDR is on or off. You cannot use both HDR and flash at the same time. Now, if you're really kind of interested in taking great pictures, you might want to investigate BoomerTech Adventures course, Take Awesome Pictures with Your iPhone or iPad, where we go into great detail on these items. Before we move off of exposure, however, let me show you an example from HDR. These pictures were taken at the same time in my garden, which the back part of it is shaded, but you can see there was some sunlight on the front. With HDR off on the right, you notice that the yellow daylily is washed out. It's reflecting the sun and you really can't see any detail. Some of the other plants are kind of washed out also. Whereas once I turned HDR on, if you look at the same location, so it's just a twin of the first picture, you really can see the detail of that yellow daylily and the foliage around it. So again, when you're playing around with HDR, I'd take two pictures, one with it on, one with it off, and keep the one you really like. Let's move on to live photo. Now this is really a pretty cool feature also. Live photo means it's a very, very, very short video. What happens is a 1.5-second video is taken before and after the still image. So when you go to the Photos app and select that picture, you will see kind of a little jerk or a little movement. So if you're looking at that squirrel picture, if I could show you the live aspect of it, his tail would twitch. What it does is it puts the image in context. And you want to use it, you want to have live photo turned on when there's movement involved. Brooks and waterfalls, ocean waves, squirmy animals, active children. You can see that it is a live picture. This is from Photos app, of course, where the yellow arrow is pointing and it says live. Now, when you attach this image to an email or a text, you're not going to see the movement. The only place you really see the movement is when you're looking at the picture in the Photos app. So that's, again, pretty interesting feature, fun to play around with. You can control whether it's on or off by tapping the icon. Now, something I like to have on is my grid. You can just barely see the lines that divides the photograph into 9 sections. It's kind of like a tic-tac-toe grid. What this does is helps me compose a picture. Many photographers will tell you that you shouldn't have the item of interest right smack dab in the middle, like I do with the pooch's face. That you want it where the grid intersects, especially up in the upper left-hand segment where the horizontal and the vertical grid lines intersect. That's where you put your point of interest. Again, something to play around with. You turn the grid on in settings. So you would go to settings, you'd scroll down to camera, and once you tap on camera, you'll see the option for grid. Now don't worry, the grid does not show up in anything you print or any attached images. It's really just a guide for the photographer. And by the way, just another hint, wildlife photographers suggest that when you are taking pictures of animals, you really should focus on the eye. So to make that kind of a more interesting photo, I should have had the grid line on one of Sammy's eyes. However, I didn't. He's smack dab in the middle, but you can see the grid line there. Now, under the shutter, there are what are called the thumbnails. These are the recent pictures you've taken. You just tap on them to see the full size. If you don't like them, you tap the trash can, which you see the yellow arrow is pointing to. If you do like it, you don't have to do anything, and it will be automatically saved to Photos app. But this is what's great about digital photography. You do not have to wait till you have film developed to see whether you like a picture or not. You can choose to get rid of the ones that did not come out as well as you hoped immediately. So again, the thumbnail is a place to look for your recent images. Now, speaking of images, let's talk about what your options are. Well, one is called photo, and that is the typical rectangle shape, what most of us are used to taking. You also have the option to choose square. Now, this is especially good if you like to post to social media, or you're doing something fancy for a Christmas card or a birthday card, but especially social media, because oftentimes pictures will get chopped off when you post to social media. Taking them in the square version makes that less likely. The social media all have specific parameters to where the pictures have to fit, and square fits their parameters better than photo. There's also something called portrait, which is relatively new. It's not on all iPads, and I'll show you an example in just a second. And you can also take a panorama, which gives you a wide view, a wide angle of an area. So let's look at a couple in more detail. Here's portrait. And it appears that the iPad Pro is maybe the only iPad at this point in time that has this particular feature. What portrait does is it gives you a choice of light. And if you have an iPhone, it is on your iPhone. So you can see the choices are called natural, studio, contour, etc. If you have an iPad Pro, it's fun to play around with that. You can see the picture here. It's in stage light, which blackens out the rest or grays out the rest of the picture and just focuses on the area that you want. And you can move that circle around. The way you swipe through the different choices, you see on the left where the yellow arrow is pointing, and that will tell you which type of lighting you've chosen. So if you have an iPad Pro or if you have an iPhone, it's fun again to play around with portrait and see what the different effects you can achieve with this particular feature. Now you all have the option to take a panoramic, and this is a quick set of directions on how to do that. You need to keep the iPad in portrait or upright position. You can see it's on the vertical. And you aim your camera at the point where you want the image to start. You tap the shutter once, and then you slowly sweep the camera in the direction you want it to go. You can see the white arrow there in the image. It's important to try to keep that arrow on that line to get the best shot. And when you're done, tap the shutter and your picture will be taken and it will show up in your thumbnails. Now here's an example of a panoramic, and it really does give you a sweeping view, especially of scenery. But it's also cool to use at dinner parties or holiday celebrations. What's important though is warn people you're using panoramic and tell them they got to hold still, because otherwise you get arms floating in midair. So again, something to play around with. And I would say, again, this is another good place to stop the video and practice with the different images and see what you can do with them. And when you come back, we'll be looking at the types of video. There are three kinds of video. There's regular, which is, you push the shutter and you point the camera where you want it to go. You will pick up both the visual and the audio, and the camera app will really do a good job picking up audio. The second is slow-mo, where everything is slowed down. This is great for athletes, to have somebody film them, like what's your golf swing like, what's your tennis swing like, or you're going up on a basketball shot. You get to see where there might be a place that you can improve. So that's fun to play around with. Also, it just adds a special effect if you're making videos for your friends and family. The third is time-lapse. This is where you have to point your iPad, push the shutter, and then you need to walk away. So the iPad has to be somewhere where it is stable. And you walk away for about 10 minutes and you come back and push the shutter again, and all the action has been condensed into a few seconds. And I'll show you an example here. I'm going to click on the video and it will go live. You have to look way at the back because there are going to be birds back there. That's what's in the time lapse. Now, I happen to take this with my iPhone, but it works the same on the iPad. And what I did was I was shooting through the screen. You can see it there. I rested my iPhone against the screen, pushed the shutter, walked away for about 10 minutes, came back, and tapped the shutter again. So you can see the birds going in double time or triple time. It's just kind of fun to play around with. Well, you may have just heard a little barking. That was unplanned, but it's a good thing that it happened in a way, because when you are making a movie, when you are filming a video that you want to use this for something special, it's good to turn on notifications, or turn off notifications rather, and silence your phone so you don't get interrupted. I did all of those things, but unfortunately, I couldn't silence my dog when the UPS man came to the door. So anyway, just something to remember. If you're filming, you may want to silence your phone, turn off notifications so you don't get dings. And if you have a dog, you might want to put him in the other room. Okay, let's go on. So this is what you'd see when you are doing a video. Of course, there would be actual items there. I've just got a blank screen. But to start the video, you of course tap the red button, the shutter. You can see how long the video is running by looking up at the top. You see the time count, and you can see on the left the type of video you're shooting. And then finally, when you're ready to end, you can just tap the red square and that will end the video. So again, something fun to play around with and make kind of cool things for family and friends, or maybe you use it for your business. Then you definitely have to have the dog out of the room. Okay, let's move on to the timer. You can set the timer for either 3 or 10 seconds, and you see the icon there. If you want to be in the picture, then you probably want to set it for 10 seconds so you won't hurt yourself flying over footstools or rocks to join the people you want to be with in the picture. Again, you need to put your iPad someplace where it will be stable. So it's pretty simple to use the timer. You simply tap the timer icon. You choose the time, 3 or 10 seconds. You tap the shutter, and if you want to be in the picture, that's when you move. And you will see a countdown on the screen, and then the picture will be taken. So again, something to play around with, try it out. If it is again a situation where you don't think you can hold your iPad steady to make sure that everything is in sharp focus, put it someplace stable and use the timer, because then you won't be disturbing anything, or you won't move the camera app when you touch the shutter because it'll go off automatically. As we come to this video, I want to review how to attach a photo to an email or a text. What you have to remember is you start in the Photos app and you choose your image. Once you have that image chosen, then you tap the share icon. You see the square with the arrow pointing up. Once you do that, you will see a screen that looks something like this. You see you have the options for AirDrop, messages, mail, etc. So you pick either messages or mail, whichever one you want to attach the image to, and it will be automatically embedded. On the left, you see it's embedded in email, and on the right, you see it is embedded in a text message. But again, what's important, people often forget, is you have to start in the Photos app and choose your picture there, and then tap on the share button. So we come to the end, a couple of ideas I'd like to leave you with. You really need to practice using these various features. Oftentimes we're using our picture, in family gatherings, or we're out and about, and we get caught up in the moment and we forget what these features are. We forget that we can control the focus or the exposure, or do we want to try HDR, all those things. But if you practice using them in a time period where there's no pressure, then you're going to internalize these features. So practice. There's lots of things. You can just sit in your living room and try a video or try the portrait using your pet or a family or friend who's willing to pose. And again, if you don't like it, you can trash it. Experiment. It really is pretty amazing what you can do with these cameras. And so we encourage you to try different things. You're not paying for film or paying for development, so you can take as many as you want. But I remind you that it's important to delete the ones you don't like because they do take up space on your device. And that's what the final point is. Remember to trash the images you don't like. So thank you for watching. As you have noticed, these videos are kind of in an informal mode with barking dogs occasionally. And that's because we want you to feel like you're sitting at your kitchen table with us next to you. I remind you that you can email us at ed@boomertechadventures.com if you have any questions. You see the picture of the three of us there, and one of us will get back to you pretty quickly. Also, please visit our website, BoomerTechAdventures.com, where you can learn more about our different resources. Thanks for watching.